Thank you all for joining us. This workshop, part 2 of our series, Navigating UNLV Graduate College Thesis and Dissertation Process. In this session, we will be covering Authenticate and Digital Scholarship. Joining us today are Megan Wilson, Retention, Progression, and Completion Coordinator at the Graduate College, and Andrea Worth, Scholarly Communication Librarian and Associate. They will be discussing Authenticate and Digital Scholarship. I'm going to hand it over to Megan now to get us started.
Hello, everyone. Can I get, can you either, sorry, Jessica, can either you or Marlena upload the PowerPoint or get, oh, never mind. I'm good. I have share access. We're awesome. Yay. Okay, so my name is Megan Wilson. I am a retention, I am an RPC coordinator, which stands for Retention, Progression, and Completion. It's my job to get you through the process, starting from orientation all the way through graduation. Give me a second. I'm going to set up the PowerPoint. All right. Can everybody see that okay? Okay. Here we go. So we're going to be discussing Authenticate. Authenticate is a similarity check software. So you're going to be given, and what is a similarity check software program? I know some of you might have heard of it as the evil, it's to prevent plagiarism. It's not actually to prevent plagiarism. It's actually to make sure you're doing your due diligence, because over time, you are so involved in your research, it's really hard to not take on the voice of the materials you're reading. So this is an opportunity for you to go through to make sure you are citing everyone correctly and that everything is in good standing. And so that on the very rare chance something goes wrong and you need to go and someone says, hey, you didn't cite me for this. You can say, well, I did show due diligence and it didn't show up in my check, but we can fix it on the back end. You're going to be sent your account through Rebel Mail. Accounts are sent to new doctoral students their second semester and master's students after they've completed 15 or more graduate credits. If you can't log into your account or if you need login information, please reach out to grad.systems@unlv.edu. All theses and dissertations must run through Authenticate similarity software prior to your defense. A PDF copy of the full similarity summary report should be given to your advisory committee at least a week prior to your defense, preferably 2 weeks. This will allow your committee to read through the report and do a double check so they can sign off on your culminating experience form and not delay that process. The first page of the similarity summary report listing the overall similarity percentage should be attached to the culminating experience form before it is submitted to the graduate college. The formatting on this report is important so that you do choose the right report, and we'll go through that a little bit later. But if for some reason you don't choose the right report format and you send us the first page of a report that doesn't quite work for us, we will reach out to you and ask you for either the full PDF so we can pull the information we need, or we'll give you instructions on how to run the similarity summary report and get that first page that we need attached to your culminating experience report. So as I said before, the use of similarity software protects you and the university from accidental plagiarism. That's what we're worried about. We do not think that you have twirly mustaches and you're plotting against us to steal information from other sources. We all know this happens accidentally, that this can happen accidentally. And we want to make sure that you're doing the best you can as a researcher and as an academic to help. This protects you because it points to items that you may have missed during your initial citation checks. It also points to items where you can give yourself a pat on the back. So it's going to point to everything. So for example, if you have a huge chunk of text in your paper that is cited correctly, it's going to show up on this report, but you can say, oh, look, it's cited correctly. I don't have to worry about that. It'll also show that you acted in good faith and you did due diligence on the very slim chance that someone comes forward and says that, hey, wait a second, I wasn't cited properly in this, or this really suspiciously matches up with my research. You have that step, you have this report to show, hey, no, I did everything I was supposed to do. This is just coincidence that this happened, or your information is coming out at the same time as mine, but it gives you that extra layer of protection. This is a value-added service, which is awesome if you think about it. It's not limited to thesis and dissertation requirements. The account is unlimited and can be used for any project, so papers, articles, grants, etc. We actually have some students who are submitting through Ithenticate right now so that they can be published in a journal. And they were having some issues with that, so we worked with them. But this allowed them to do this for free, and it's a value-added service given to graduate students at UNLV. So in this value-added service, what you get is unlimited access. Each document similarity check is valued at $100. If you wanted to run this on your own through Ithenticate, it would charge you $100 per paper per submission. So this gives you unlimited access to this. You can use this as much or as little as you want. And you have total controls of the documents and your account. So we don't see what's in your account. You can upload a document as many times as you want. You can upload as many documents as you want. And we're never going to see those documents. Your committee is never going to see those documents. Authenticate's not going to see those documents outside of the algorithm that's checking. And you delete or add those documents. Once you leave the university, that account gets closed and those documents go away. So when you're starting the Authenticate process, if you go into your Google browser and type in Authenticate, that is not the way to find the Authenticate site that you need for free. This will send you to the pay site. This is not the Authenticate page you want. If you get this page, they're going to try to charge you to submit your document and to create an account. So the page you actually want is going to come from your Rebel mail. So you'll get an email to your Rebel mail. This is the email that I got. And it says, Grad Rebel Authenticate account created. It'll give you the information on your account. It'll give you a login URL. It'll give you a login name and a password. It's a one-time password. You'll have to change it. Once you change that password, the only person who can get into that account is you, unless you share your password. The only people who can see your documents are you, or if you have another user in the system that you decide to share those documents with. Otherwise, it's totally under your control. So this will go you, this is the login page that you want. You'll put in your email. You'll put in the email, which is going to be your login. It's going to be your Rebel Mail account and the temporary password they gave you. You'll log in. And when you log in, you're going to see this page here. And this page here is going to be your doc. So this will be initially blank. You'll go over here to upload documents. You'll fill out the information on your document, upload, and pull that document in so you can upload that file. Once you upload the file, it'll start the similarity check process. So you'll upload the file, you'll select the uploaded file to run the similarity report. Your document will appear on your dashboard once the similarity report process is started. Keep in mind this process can take up to 24 hours depending on the length of your paper. If you have a longer paper, if you have a paper with a lot of plates in it or images, it'll take longer to process. It'll also take longer to process if you wait to the very last minute to upload to Ithenticate. So the earlier you're running this report, the faster it'll run. But keep in mind, it can take up to 24 hours. Usually the time's about an hour, but the most it'll take is 24 hours. When it's done, a box with a percentage will appear in your next to your document title, as it's shown here. You'll just click on that to go to your report. Now, troubleshooting file size. This process should work every single time with the exception of file size. If for some reason your file is too big, it's over 100 megabytes, you're going to have to zip the file to make it smaller and then upload it. So if you have to zip the file to make it smaller, files over, you'll just zip it into a file. If for some reason, and you can just zip the document by itself. If for some reason your document is over 800 pages, you're going to want to break it down into smaller documents, place them into a file folder on your desktop, and then zip that file folder. Zipped files over 200 megabytes will not be accepted by the system. In these very rare cases, you're going to want to review your document and remove large items such as images and data sets from your appendix. So for example, if you have the 2012 census data for the state of Nevada in your appendix as a reference, you're going to want to take that out before you run it through Ithenticate. Then you'll take the smaller document with those data sets removed, upload it to a zipped file, run it through Ithenticate as before. If your file size is still too large, you're going to contact grad.rpc@unlv.edu, or you're going to contact gradrebel@unlv.edu for further assistance, and we can help you troubleshoot the situation to figure out a way to make it work for, to run through the system. So after you've gotten your file into the system, you've run your report, you're going to see your results. So the first thing you're going to do with your results is you'll notice that your results page will automatically populate with just the first page of your document, which really isn't very helpful for you. So you're going to go over here, and over on the right, on the bottom right, you'll select the box that says select text only report. This text only report will provide you with more information in a more legible format. And that's the report you're going to get. And you'll notice that it's going to have on this side your overall percentage, a link to the document where the similarity is found online, which is right here, and it's next to the percentage. And these are ranked in order of how much of your paper matches up to that link. So if you click on number 1, you'll see it comes over here and it says this segment of text matches these documents. You click on and sometimes that can be because it's a quote, sometimes it can be because the formatting. A lot of these show up for your title page because of lots of students have submitted and uploaded through ProQuest from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. So that information is going to show up in the similarity report. If you see that, don't worry about it. Go on to the next item. You'll also see that it's color coded so that they'll match up. And so you can search through them fairly easily. The next step is going to be adjusting for those common similarities. So for example, quotes. or the bibliography. References will show up in your similarity report unless you mark them to not be shown, unless you mark them to be removed. So you'll select up here at the top for on your report page to exclude quotes and exclude the bibliography. And you'll notice that this will drop your overall percentage. Now, when you get ready to print your final report, you're going to select Summary Report from the drop-down menu, and then you're going to click the print icon and print to PDF. And that will give you that'll give you the single page that you're going to attach, that you'll attach to your culminating experience form in the Grad Rebel Gateway. It will also give you a report that you're going to send off to your committee members so that they can read easily, go through it very quickly. Our goal is for you to succeed. So these are items that are going to help you succeed in your journey. And if for some reason you're having issues with them, we ask you to come to us so that we can help you with it. We're not doing this to be punitive. We're not doing this because we don't trust you. We're doing this because this helps you in your academic career and helps you with your sense of professionalism. And now we're at questions. So
thank you so much, Meg. So
you're very welcome.
Can we do that for in-text citations?
In-text citations generally, as long as they're formatted according to a standard formatting guide or style guide, they will automatically be taken out. If for some reason the formatting is a little bit off, they'll get noted. Unfortunately, in the similarity report, in those cases, just check to make sure that everything is as it should be, and you'll be fine.
Sorry, am I allowed to ask a question?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, I'm pretty much done with the close to final copy of my dissertation, so I was thinking about running it through Ithenticate now, but I wasn't sure if we should be running it multiple times. Is it safe to run a report now, correct any similarities, and then run it again later before I present it to my committee, as well as send it to you guys?
Oh, of course. We recommend that you run it through Ithenticate starting early on, actually. And you can always run the report multiple times. It won't check against itself. So if you have multiple versions of the same document within your Ithenticate file, it's not going to check against those documents. It's only going to check against stuff that's been published online.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Let's take one more question, and then maybe we can continue to take questions after Andrea's presentation. But one more question, if that's okay, Meg. What is the percentage that is acceptable for dissertation?
The average percentage that we're looking at is 20%. So 20% is a good overall average. Generally, most percentages fall between 11 and 12%. Any is acceptable, but we need a reason as to why it's higher than normal. And that happens a lot in if you're doing any kind of textual analysis, you'll have a higher than average percentage. If you're doing any kind of research where you're using someone else's tools that they've developed, such as surveys that information will show up as a higher percentage. You'll also have higher percentages if you are doing the 3-article dissertation option. You'll also have higher percentages if you're using if a chapter of your thesis or dissertation is based off an already published article that you've done.
Great, so thorough. Thank you so much, Meg. I'm going to hand it over now to Andrea Worth, who will be discussing digital scholarship for us. Andrea?
Hi, everyone. I'm going to get my slides up on the screen here. Hopefully you can see that. Awesome. Okay. So I am here to talk about the thesis and dissertation submission process and tips. I will say that the word submission, I believe, is used a lot throughout the process of working on kind of the final product of your time as a graduate student here. So in my context, I'm talking about submission to ProQuest and also digital scholarship. I'm not talking about the point of submission where maybe you're giving it to, of course, your committee or the graduate college initially. So I just want to make that clear up front. So with that, I'll get started. So I'm going to cover these items. So first, I'll try to give you a timeline from your submission to ProQuest to when your dissertation or thesis becomes available. I'll talk about digital scholarship at UNLV and ProQuest. They're really very much intertwined as far as this process goes. What you need to do to submit your work to the ProQuest, including some settings you may want to take advantage of, and then contacts if you have additional questions. And of course, we can have questions throughout the presentation as well. So this timeline is a little tricky to pin down. It's not exact, as you can tell by some of probably the ranges provided here. So the library enters the process at the point at which you get an approval email from the graduate college. That's the first time the library becomes aware that there is a new thesis or dissertation coming our way sometime in the near future. So that typically happens towards the end of the semester, but not, as everybody here knows, probably not always. Some folks get theirs done, complete this part earlier in the semester. So once you get that approval, you're ready to submit to ProQuest. From that time, it may take a month or two. I think in the past it's taken several more to get to the point of degree conferral when works actually are able to be approved for delivery to ProQuest. I'm using a lot of jargon here, but there's just a few steps along the way. So feel free to ask me if nothing's clear. And then ProQuest will send us in turn a copy of your thesis or dissertation, abbreviated here as electronic thesis or dissertation, ETD, along with the metadata that you and they have created. And then we add it to digital scholarship. And again, there's some variations in this depending on staffing levels, depending on how quickly ProQuest acts, etc. So it can take anywhere from maybe 4 months from the point at which you get that approval email up to maybe 8 months.
I apologize. I want to
Sure.
speak up for a moment. You're in presenter view. We can't see the full PowerPoint. We can only see the presenter view.
And that was not my intention. I have the other one up. Hold on a second. Thank you. Funny thing is I wasn't even looking at my notes. How about now? Do you see the arrow without notes?
No, it's still the text.
Let me get out of presenter view.
That looks great.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. No one needs to see my messy notes. Okay, I will just pause here for a moment so you can see the arrow and the timeline. But I was just saying it could take anywhere from maybe 4 months or so up to 7 or 8 months from the time at which you receive an approval from the graduate college until the time the library ProQuest do all their work to actually have the works available online. So ProQuest Dissertations and Theses Global is where your works end up. This is just a screenshot of one of our UNLV dissertations or theses, I'm not sure which one, and how it looks in the record. This interface may look familiar to you if you use ProQuest databases as a resource in your own research. If you've ever used this database specifically, it is an international subscription-based databases that so many institutions subscribe to specifically for the purpose of capturing this global research done by graduate students all over the world. Probably a lot of folks from North America, maybe primarily, since that's where ProQuest is based, but certainly other places as well. So as I mentioned, it's a subscription database, so you have access to it as a student here at UNLV, and then of course other students and faculty have access to it. Other institutions will subscribe to it. Not everybody does, but many do, and if they do, that means folks are finding your work that way. Folks without a subscription would need to pay for access, and they can find that a work exists, and then I believe send a request to ProQuest to pay for a copy to be delivered to them personally. It's indexed widely, so it really adds to the discoverability of the content there. So that means it'll be seen in other information systems where they share their metadata, say with the library online catalog or other types of things where the works come up, and then the viewer is taken right to that resource and can view your work there. It is a commercial product, of course. It's probably obvious from the fact that it's a subscription database, but they can sell your thesis, and that is part of the agreement. There are royalties that go along with that, and I'll cover that in a moment a little bit more. But there is a traditional publishing agreement that is required for you to agree to in order to go forward. So digital scholarship is a UNLV service. It is many things. It includes faculty scholarship, undergraduate works, originally published journals, but by and large, our most popular collection for usage from people from all over the world is the UNLV theses, dissertations, professional papers, and capstones, and nearly everything in this collection is theses or dissertations. We have relatively few professional papers or capstones. So they're very popular. Unlike ProQuest, the information is actually available to anybody with an internet connection, so anybody can find your work here. And it's the exact same document that's in ProQuest. And it's delivered to us from ProQuest as part of this process. So I wasn't here in 2010 or 2013, so these dates might be a little off. But before 2010, the library would still be binding theses and dissertations, cataloging it and putting it on the shelf, and that was the way folks had access to your works. We didn't do anything digitally. Sometime around 2013, all theses and dissertations began to be added to digital scholarship at UNLV, and there was a period of transition around that time where I believe different colleges and different took it up at a little bit different of a pace, but eventually we got to where every single student completing one of those two documents was added to digital scholarship. We do not make print copies anymore. That is just not something we do. We will not find a copy of your thesis or dissertation on our in our stacks in the Lead Library. So what we hope to do with digital scholarship and your theses and dissertations is the same thing we hope to do with library faculty's works that they're contributing, undergraduate student works in those journals I mentioned. There's all sorts of other contributors as well that are UNLV based. We really hope to collect, preserve it, and provide that free online access. We get questions sometime in the library, and probably everybody gets this across campus, like how are you serving or how are you making a case for students and others to come to UNLV? And I feel like this program of sharing the works openly helps other potential students find something they would like to study at UNLV. They've seen your work, they can see who's on your committee, because that's part of the metadata, and they can get inspired to join us here at UNLV. So we hope it contributes to that. You are still able to get a copy of your thesis and dissertation. dissertation bound, but you can do that on your own. I believe both Rebel Copy and Send and the HF Group, which is a commercial provider of this, are still offering those services. And then ProQuest also offers that option. This will add 4 to 8 weeks on to the time from which it first appears in ProQuest. So it's not 4 to 8 weeks after you submit it to ProQuest, it's 4 to 8 weeks after ProQuest makes it available in their database, which I mentioned can be a couple of months. And we do recognize that a lot of folks do like to have that bound copy, so we do get a fair number of questions about this. So submitting your thesis or dissertation to ProQuest requires a few steps. You have to create your account, have your thesis or have your metadata details at hand, and then PDF and supplemental files. So let me go through that. So I mentioned getting this email from the graduate college. And again, this is the first time we become aware of you having a document to add. And this might be an old version of the email, but the general concept is the same, where you get some instructions, you get a congratulations that you're ready to work on this particular step of submitting to ProQuest. And so there's some attachments that they provide that the library has helped with to walk you through step by step the ProQuest process. Creating your account is pretty straightforward. You go to the URL, again, provided in that email, create a new student account, select UNLV as your institution, and that's probably screen is tiny, but it's a pretty straightforward create an account screen. It asks for your email address, it's for your name. Again, you select UNLV as your institution. There's a few optional questions and you create a username and password. As with most systems, you'll get a link to activate, and you can, it does allow you to go in and back out to finish your submission. I want to highlight a few other things that it asks for on the screen. So I don't know if folks are familiar with ORCID, and if you want to chime in if you have one or thinking about getting one, but basically it's a unique researcher ID that helps anybody doing research, creative works for academia, for other purposes outside of academia, to create essentially a number that all of your scholarship is based under. And I like to think for many folks, their master's thesis might be, or dissertation, but probably master's thesis is maybe one of the first things that comes out. You probably also are working with articles or books perhaps, or book chapters, so those kind of things are included as well. But one of the first things might be a master's thesis, and that can be the start of all of your scholarly work at maybe what you might consider the beginning of your career for some folks, or change of career for others. And ORCID will aggregate everything from there forward as long as you're consistent in the use of your ORCID ID under that record. So whether you have an institution change, a name change, a area of focus change, move from one discipline to another, that type of thing, you can keep aggregating items under here and keep this as a reference to share with others. So anyway, so you get a choice, you get it prompted to add one if you have one in ProQuest. It is not at all required, but it's recommended by us. For email options, you're going to want to include a school email address and also your permanent email address. At some point after you graduate, your UNLV email may quit working, or even if it continues to work through Rebel Mail options, maybe you don't check it as often. So please do include a permanent email address that you will continue to check. So metadata. Librarians work a lot with metadata, maybe not so much other folks all the time. This is really just the data about what you have to add during submission. So some obvious things here like title, department, degree name and date, your committee members. It also asks for an abstract, and then you have choices to add keywords, and I believe subject categories. At least one subject category is required. You also have an option to add supplemental files, so both the ProQuest system and the Digital Scholarship Semester database can handle additional files along with the main file. So within reason, if you have a huge file, maybe not, but Excel spreadsheets, a few images, that type of thing, you can definitely use. and include. So if you upload your PDF and supplemental file, I believe the Graduate College has some really good advice about how to create a PDF, how to do it well. So I won't spend too much time on this, but the screenshot in the middle is meant to just reiterate that you want to have fonts that are going to translate, hopefully translate well over time. We hope these works are available for the really long term. I have 20 years on the screen. It could be much longer than that, and we don't want corrupted files. So follow the instructions from the Graduate College on that. Same with any text-based supplemental files and that type of thing. The other thing I would say about this is if you're sharing supplemental files and say, for example, it's a spreadsheet, you may wish to consider sharing it as a CSV if that doesn't mess with any formatting too much. CSV are a little more friendly than a proprietary solution like Excel. So take that into consideration as well. So you're entering your metadata and then you get to ProQuest publishing options. And they ask you some questions where you have a choice. Do you want your work to be discovered by internet search engines? Do you want to delay publication? And then I mentioned ProQuest traditional publishing agreement earlier, and also a question about filing for copyright. So this is what that screen looks like when you're inside the ProQuest thing. Choose yes, or choose yes if you want to have your work discovered and used. Choose no if you'd like them to not allow it to be indexed. Doesn't mean that question does not mean it won't show in ProQuest. It just means that they won't share the metadata out with other resources. And then there's another option that is actually really, really important to consider and to probably consider early and thoughtfully. Do you want to delay publication of your work? And so that's also referred to as embargo. And the Graduate College has a whole process that you can use to advocate for that. I'm not going to go into the details of how that's done, but just know that is an option. If you have, and they ask, I believe, on the form for a reason, and then there's some choices about how long you would like publication to be delayed. I believe it ranges from 1 year up to 7 years. So again, the Graduate College handles that, but the library implements it once we get the approval from the Graduate College that your work is going to be delayed. If you answer yes here, and we don't have anything from the Graduate College that indicates they've approved an embargo, just know that you'll get a question from us that says, we see that you've requested an embargo. Please reach out to the Graduate College to facilitate that process because we won't apply it without their approval. So I mentioned online discoverability of your work, just a couple of examples here. Of course, we all know Google Scholar and Google, so got that down on the screen. You can see digital scholarship popping up here. On the right-hand side is our institution up north. This is what their catalog looks like. And of course, they're pulling in our students' work as well. So just a couple of examples of where research ends up. But then we also have discipline-based indexes that really are national, if not global. So PsycInfo, SciFinder, PubMed, ERIC, these are everything from psychology to science, chemistry, and medicine and education, just as examples that are pulling in some of the data that helps make your work discoverable. Again, if you really do want to go for that discoverability option, consider your keywords carefully, pick your subject categories carefully. Keywords are free text. You can come up with anything you want. Subject categories are defined, and again, you're required to choose one. You have the option to choose, I think it's 1 or 2 more. Abstract, consider how you're writing your abstract, and this is really the abstract that's inside the document, but it's still a point of consideration. Obviously, if you want to share your work once it becomes available, that'll help with discoverability. Share links to it, I guess, in social media. And then go to those questions that we covered a moment ago and say yes to both about internet search engines, ProQuest, publication without embargo. If you aren't interested in your work being discovered right away, which is true for some folks for good reasons, do not be quite as thorough with your keywords. I think that's a little tricky. I think probably your embargo is your best bet on that, because at some point, 20 years from now, hopefully it doesn't reflect what you were working on now. So like if you're embargoing your work because you want to publish somewhere else and the publisher will not allow you to make your thesis or dissertation available, you wouldn't want your decision about providing no keywords 20 years from now when that's no longer an issue to influence the fact that your thesis or dissertation is never found. So think about that closely, that it is an option. And again, answer no to the embargo or internet search engine questions if you do not want your work to be discoverable. So ProQuest traditional publishing agreement, compared to some publishing agreements, it's not too long, but it is a lot of fine text. You do have to allow for it. It's a requirement of UNLV that you submit your work here, with very few exceptions. This is a lot of fine text, and I don't intend for you to be able to read this on the screen. It's probably tiny for some of you, but I do want to highlight that they're talking about what you're granting ProQuest to do with their work. So just read it through and ask questions of either us or the graduate college if you have any. It also covers the fact that they're selling your work if someone requests it. So such as for folks who don't have access through an academic discipline, or excuse me, an academic institution, they can pay to buy a copy. It also talks about royalties way down at the bottom. I didn't go check to see if this was the same, but at this point, you get 10% of net revenue from sales of the work, as long as ProQuest is able to stay in touch with you through a current address. So there's a little bit of work on your part that you need to update with ProQuest if that changes. And then they say royalties will be paid when they reach $25. So they're not going to send a check for less than that. So to mention a little bit more about copyright and embargoes. So just because you're publishing online, even for digital scholarship where it's a publicly accessible database, it does not mean your work is not protected by copyright. It is protected by copyright in the same way that a journal article you find in one of our digital collections is protected, the same way that information found on a company's website is protected. It is still protected by copyright. You are not making your work you're making your work freely available to read in digital scholarship. You're not making it freely available to plagiarize or do anything else that is outside of copyright law. So you own the rights to your work. UNLV does not claim copyright on theses and dissertations. I'm not going to go over all that the copyright law covers, but this is your work, and it might be a good idea to just remind yourself what your rights are in case you do find that your work is found elsewhere that you had no intention of having it maybe found on maybe some nonprofit organization made a copy and posted it on their website. They wouldn't necessarily be in the right. Sorry, I shouldn't say necessarily. They probably would not be in the rights to do something like that unless you gave them permission. So you can file an official copyright. I should reiterate that your work is protected by copyright at the moment you create it in tangible form. However, filing for copyright can help you in the sense that if you do find an infringement, you can take legal action more easily. You can also file for copyright at any time, so you don't have to do it right now. The last time I checked, this may have changed. The U.S. Copyright Office charged $35. They have a paper application form. ProQuest offers this option. I don't remember what the cost is at this time, and you don't need to do this as part of your thesis or dissertation as far as UNLV is concerned, but just know that's an option too. So I think I covered this earlier. This is really about the embargo. Embargo, having one or not, contributes, of course, to discoverability and availability of your work. So there are reasons to restrict or delay access to your work. Most publishers of academic journals are not too restrictive with this, but every once in a while you come across one that says, no, you cannot have your thesis or dissertation on which this article is based on publicly available. Ask your institution to embargo it. So you may come across that, and that's perfectly fine. There's other reasons as well, patents pending, other types of information that you just, for whatever reason, may not care to share this yet. It's also highly different by different disciplines. So ask the folks that are experts in your field that you're already in contact with. So these are the embargo options, 1 year through 7 years. The most you can do in digital scholarship is a 7-year embargo, which I believe has the option to renew. Obviously, things may have changed between when you graduate and 7 years forward, so there is a bit of a burden on you to keep up with the communications and remember that date if that is important to you to renew. You can have a permanent embargo in ProQuest. I think I covered some of these rationales, but this is some guidance from the graduate college, I believe, on why you might choose 1 year versus 7 years. Books tend to end up with folks choosing the longer ones, whereas articles are typically a little shorter. Just wanted to assure you that when we're in digital scholarship, we've still got the file on an embargoed ProQuest thesis or dissertation in our system, but how it looks is what it looks like on the left. The system automatically puts a download button there. If you click on it, nothing will happen. You will get a message that says this item is embargoed until August 15th, 2023 in this case. Metadata is public. Someone can find it, but they are not going to have access to it. Alternatively, on the right-hand side is one that is not embargoed, and instead you see the downloads that it's accruing. And these screenshots were taken a little while ago, so the one on the right probably has more downloads. And just to wrap up, this is a bit of a lengthy process with lots of us involved. So between you, the graduate college, everybody in your department, and your advisors that are involved, all the way through the library who works with ProQuest and Digital Scholarship to get stuff up online for you. And if you have questions, I'm happy to take questions at either of the emails on the screen later if you think of something later. I need to double check that that slide link works, so I will fix that and share it with our graduate college hosts so that you have the right URL. There is a library's quick take video that covers submitting to ProQuest in 4.5 minutes, and then we have a thesis and dissertations resources guide online that includes things like binding your thesis or dissertation, so outside of the ProQuest and digital scholarship realm. And with that, through chat.
I did have one question in the chat. Would you please explain a bit more about data dictionary?
You know, that's a question that I probably can't explain well. If you're sharing a data set through this process, it would really be something that helps the users understand what they're getting in the data. I am not a research data management expert, so I don't want to delve too far into that, but it has to do with really explaining and making your data usable, so they're not just getting like a raw text file or raw CSV and kind of trying to figure it out.
Thank you. Let's see, I have more questions coming in. Some directly to me.
I guess I'd be curious if anybody, usually we get some questions at some point about embargoes. I don't know if anybody has any. I think there's several graduate college folks on the call, and I'm here, and if anybody has questions about why or when or how to do that embargo.
So while we wait for some questions to come in, I did share in the chat a link directly to our UNLV Graduate College Ithenticate page, the TD guidelines page, as well as the digital scholarship page.
Thank you for doing that, Jessica.
Of course. So I don't know if this question might be more for Meg. I know we weren't specifically discussing ProQuest today, but what someone's asking, what are the differences in the functions of Ithenticate and ProQuest?
So Ithenticate is just a similarity software program. So it's just going to check your document against huge repositories. So it's going to check against every book that's been published, everything that's online, and everything that's in the actual ProQuest repository. and it's going to tell you as an individual what parts of the document are similar to other documents that are out there in the world. As far as ProQuest goes, ProQuest is the repository. So that's where your document's going to live, and it'll be accessible to other schools if you choose not to embargo. It'll also, if for some reason you decide to embargo, that's where it's just going to live in a holding pattern until such time as your embargo expires. So that if for some reason you needed a copy of it, if we're requested, if we're audited and they're like, well, we want a copy of students' theses or dissertations for proof that they completed it, we can point them to that information.
Thank you, Meg. Another student's asking, what is the timeline to this entire process?
Okay. So from your thesis or dissertation defense to it being uploaded to ProQuest is going to depend on when you defend and when you defend in the semester and when all the documents are into us so we can confer degrees. So for example, if you defend the first week of February, you're looking at a process where you're not going to actually see your document in ProQuest probably until around August, September. If you, so you're looking at about a 7-month process. If you're uploading in May, again, it's going to be August, September, but it's going to be a 3 to 4 month process. So it just depends on when you upload to ProQuest, how close you are to the end of the semester, and situations such as current one that we're in with COVID and deadlines being extended due to circumstances. In those circumstances, it's going to be a little bit longer to get uploaded to ProQuest.
Right, so it's depending on the time of year and then also considering the effects of COVID. There are delays, understandably. I have another question that did come in. Let me locate it. After we graduate, until when do we have to access ProQuest? Sure.
So I can tell you it will work for as long as you have an ACE account, but I don't know when the ACE account expires. That's kind of your time at which you would have a little bit of a buffer to access any of the library's subscribed resources.
I guess I'm going to answer your question with a question. How do you mean access ProQuest? Do you mean to alter your metadata and your account information? Or do you mean to view articles in ProQuest through the library?
Following up in a private chat, but if we don't hear,
well, I'll just answer because Andrea already answered part of that question. I'll answer the other half.
Yeah.
Half of that, in terms of you as the user, as long as you and Andrea can. My thought is that you continue to have access to your ProQuest data, so you can update your address, update your email, but you're not going to actually be able to alter your document.
So the student clarified to have access to my own submission, but also access other submissions. I think it was both just access generally to ProQuest. I believe Andrea and Meg confirmed that it depends how long your ACE account and then until it closes. But would students still have access even after their ACE account, always to their own submission?
Andrea?
That was a great question. I do not know the answer to that. Definitely not to edit it, as Meg said, but as far as to be able to read it or not, I don't know. We can definitely look into that. Good question.
We will definitely follow up with this student regarding that.
As far as the seeing other documents in ProQuest, one thing that you can look into as a student is once you've graduated, you can get access to all library materials by by doing a yearly alumni subscription. So for about $75 to $100 a year, you'll have access to all the materials available through the UNLV library system as an alumni.
I don't see any more questions coming in. Thank you so much, Meg and Andrea. If we do have additional questions, we definitely will be reaching out to you both. And I really appreciate you all just sharing your expertise, your time with us, being so thorough, and to all of our participants. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.